Are you unbothered, moisturized, and in your lane? I hope so, because I'm about to hit you with the science of getting jacked. Come with me. The training dose is the most important principle you can learn and apply with exercise. It is super duper trauma-informed and evidence-based. It will affect your gains, your pains, your enjoyment, and your depth of understanding how to progress towards your goals in a way that takes care of your whole being. Practically, thinking about your training dose is how you make changes to your daily and weekly workout plans by listening to your body and considering your whole life stress context, aka your allostatic load. We talked about that last time. Some people may find this general form of knowledge overwhelming, while others can find it really empowering. I tend to think wherever empowering knowledge is found, there will always be some uncomfortable initial growth in learning how to wield it with care. At the end of the day, we're not here to tell you what to do, but if you are curious and want to explore something that could help clarify how to navigate your health journey, keep watching. We talked about allostatic load in the last video and how too much chronic stress is predictive of poor health outcomes. There's also a sweet spot or range of stress where your body can become more resilient over time. Some components of allostatic load, like your work, commute, and family, you will not have a lot of ability to control or change on a short-term basis. But your exercise or training dose is the component of allostatic load that you probably have the most control over, and it has such a large range of dose. With proper training, you can eventually do cardio for hours and hours, or not at all. A training dose in this context is a quantity of exercise that induces a stress in your body, then response or adaptation in the aftermath. Dose, stress, response is an important sequence to understand. Higher training doses tend to produce greater stresses and sometimes greater responses within a range your unique body can currently tolerate. Sometimes the stress is described as a performance decrement magnitude, as shown in this graph, which is a fancy way to say the dose decreases your ability to do the same thing again because it made you tired. More le dose, more le tired. Within this dose and stress range that you can currently tolerate, it will tend to create positive responses in your body, like improved strength or cardio, so long as the main recovery building blocks are available, like protein, calories, and sleep. But what is a training dose exactly? In a more practical way. Simply put, there are two primary ways to understand it. One with respect to cardiorespiratory exercise and the other with respect to strength exercise. The basic formula that both share in common is training dose equals internal load times volume. Let's talk about internal load first. Internal load on a biological level is very difficult to measure. How much stress do your muscle fiber cells and cardiorespiratory system experience when you do a heavy set of squats or run a 5K? Hard to measure. Each person's body responds very differently in this regard too. Studies show that current tech devices like smartwatches and heart rate monitors do an okay job with measuring your body's stress experience of a dose when doing steady, predictable aerobic exercise. But if it has any higher intensity components like sprinting or strength training concurrently, you can pretty much throw it out. However, internal load on a subjective, feelings-based level is very easy to measure with some education and practice. It's just your RPE. If you recall, RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion, a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being your maximum effort. It is basically how hard you feel you are working inside your body relative to the external load you are placing upon it. How much stress you're experiencing in your body relative to your perceived maximum ability. That's RPE. Studies show RPE is sufficient to effectively manage your training dose in all areas once you learn how to sense your RPE well enough to trust it and learn to live with a certain amount of uncertainty because you are relying on your own subjective assessment to guide you. For cardio exercises, we can be a bit more specific and say the training dose equals the average RPE times the duration or time you're doing the exercise for. We can also use percentage of maximum heart rate in place of RPE because they're just different ways to express the same thing. Percent of max heart rate is fairly easy to measure with any modern fitness watch, so if you have one, feel free to use that. If you remember the physical activity guidelines for cardio we talked about a while ago, the dose for that is 150 or more minutes per week of moderate intensity cardio. Moderate intensity being defined as RPE 6 or 7 or 60 to 70% of max heart rate. If you do the math here for dose based on that internal load times volume formula, that's 150 minutes times 6 to 7, 900 to about 1,050 RPE minutes. I do little finger quotes because the exact units used are not terribly important, but it is important that whatever units you use are consistent so that you can measure changes relative to your current dose. Welcome to your dose ratio. This is the ratio of your acute dose, what you're doing right now, to your chronic dose, what you're used to basically. If you're used to doing 100 minutes at RPE 6, and next week you do 110 minutes at the same RPE, your dose ratio is 110 over 100 or 1.1. It went up 10%. I hope this makes sense, as this is basically the key to managing your training dose for the rest of your life. If you're kind of a nerd and numbers oriented like me, you might be jumping ahead right now and envisioning a glorious spreadsheet to track all this, kind of like the Garmin app shown a moment ago, and you're welcome to do that of course. But I wouldn't necessarily encourage it right away because it is a lot of work. It's imprecise even when working with numbers, and most people can get what they need out of this knowledge by simply learning to listen to their body and self-reflecting on a short-term basis. How does the dose I'm about to do today compare it to what my body is used to historically? If you ask that question regularly and sometimes adjust or reduce your workout to meet your current life context and total allostatic load, you're probably doing enough. The next important thing about the training dose is you have a baseline dose you are doing right now. Even if it's close to zero, it's probably not in fact zero. Is your heart beating right now? Then you are experiencing some cardio stress, your resting metabolic rate. The important takeaway of this video is to only make small changes to your current dose once you understand what it basically is. If you are sedentary, doing a 10-minute walk a few days per week may be a good place to start. If you're already exercising, see if you can quantify your dose using the RPE times volume model. And if you discover that you're not yet meeting the activity guidelines, you might explore increasing your dose by 10% a week or even month and seeing how that goes for you. It's all about making these small changes over time and allowing for a healthy give and take as your total allostatic load varies with your life. For strength training, the more specific version would be training dose equals average RPE times the number of sets performed at that RPE of a given full body exercise like squats. For example, RPE 7 times 4 sets equals about 28 RPE set training dose units. If you increase or decrease either the average RPE or volume of an exercise, you have proportionally changed the training dose. The current weekly recommended dose for primary strength exercises like squats is RPE 6 to 9 times 2 to 5 sets per week. That's it. The dose ratio for strength exercises follows the same relationship as for cardio. Acute dose divided by chronic dose. If you're used to doing 4 sets at RPE 7 and next week you do a 5th set at the same RPE, your dose ratio is 5 over 4 or 1.2. You went up 20%. If you've made it this far into the video, congrats! This is the goods, the prize, the secret sauce you can start lathering on your muscles. Seriously, just start applying these principles. Stop watching videos about strength training or fitness for a while. Making gains is immersive work once you know what you're doing. If you're still here, here comes the bit of brain strain around the training dose. It turns out there is so much variance or uniqueness amongst people that the right dose can only be evaluated retrospectively, meaning in the past, looking back over the course of multiple weeks, meaning that you will need to look back at your recent exercise history over 3 or more weeks and ask yourself, did it work? As in, can you see and feel improvements in your abilities for a given dose? Or are you feeling really tired and fatigued with this dose? Or are you somewhere in the middle? If you're feeling good enough and seeing small progress after 3 to 6 weeks with a relatively consistent dose, you'll know you're on the right track. If not, you will need to slightly modify the training dose and evaluate again over a period of time. Some people really don't like this kind of uncertainty because they want soothing, simple answers. Our society, and especially in the fitness space, has conditioned people to focus on prescriptive things, just do this right now, that give them a sense of instant power. And they often don't work because the foundations for the simple things are weak sauce. This is ultimately discouraging and disempowering. So see if you can work with some uncertainty towards a deeper understanding that can help you on a longer timeline. To sort of meta-communicate this another way, I'm making a conscious choice to address some details in this video at the risk of losing some people's viewership by making the video longer. Science is about finding the simplest answers that do explain all the observations, no more and no less complicated than that. In our Zen strength and conditioning practice, we're not just trying to make people feel better in the moment by keeping things super simple and comfortable. We're trying to help them become well and empowered by learning to work with their discomfort and keeping things only simple enough to fulfill that mission. Welcome to our Zen. Anyways, an important pre-workout reflection you can ask yourself is, given the day or week that I've had, is today a day to do about the same training dose as last time, a little more, or a little less? It's okay if you don't have a clear answer right away. The point is just to keep asking the question and exploring it. No right or wrong. Your body will inform you as you warm up, and do the damn thing. Based on your unique body and environment, it will take some time and reflection to discover how much training dose it takes to see improvements to your abilities in whatever exercises are important to you. You can imagine a minimum effective dose, or the lowest dose it takes for you to see an improvement right now. This dose is also unique to you and will change with you over time as your body adapts to the doses you regularly provide it, or when you take a break and you come back to training when you're ready. Even walking at RPE 5 or 6 for 30 minutes per day, 3 days a week, less than the physical activity guidelines, may be enough for one person to see a real improvement in their cardio. And for another person, it's not enough. Doing 1 to 2 sets of RPE 6 squats in a week may be plenty for a novice weightlifter. It may even make them pretty sore. And for another person who has been lifting for a while, not enough to make gains. There is a genetic, a hereditary component to finding the effective dose as well. So even two people who lift weights and have been training for the same number of years will need different doses to progress similar amounts. Even for the rare identical twins out there, there is still enough difference in lifestyle and environment that it's pretty pointless to copy your twins' training plan. The individual response to the dose and the environment is that unique. You can also imagine a maximum tolerated dose or ceiling, how much of a dose you can recover from without blowing yourself up into allostatic overload. Again, this will be unique to each person and their total environment. Research shows there is no upper limit to the cardio portion of the physical activity guidelines, meaning you could potentially run an ultra marathon someday. But the point of this video is that your current weekly training dose, plus or minus 10%, is about what your body is ready for, and if you try to do much more than that, problems happen. Research also shows that there are diminishing returns for strength training volumes in excess of about 12 sets per week in that RPE 6 to 9 range. So you might consider that a safe upper limit to work towards in a given exercise if you want more gains sooner, provided that you do it in an incremental manner, no more than 10% per week. Listen to your body and reflect on your total allostatic load regularly. This is all going to be easier in theory, harder in practice, because most people, myself included, at times become helplessly attached to outcomes while exercising, often shift fluidly into parent or child ego states, and are easily drawn into competition with ourselves or with others. The ability to continuously adjust the dose in a dynamic environment, aka your real life, is the work of a lifetime, but it can start whenever you're ready to engage with this uncertainty of a trauma-informed and evidence-based approach to your exercise habits and your future.